Thank you everyone for joining us. There are a couple more people who are logging in now, but I think we will get started. So now I can officially say, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this inclusive creativity webinar, Creating Access to the Arts for People with Disabilities. I'm Ann Wicks, I'm the Communications Director at New England Foundation for the Arts. I have a few important notes for you. This event is captioned, and you may turn on the captions using the button at the bottom right of your screen, and you'll see that there are options to enlarge text on the same button. And I will put a link in the chat for anyone who has difficulty seeing the Zoom captions or who prefers quicker captions. Let me just do that now. There we go. This event includes an ASL interpreter, and if you need a larger view of our interpreter, please put a request in the chat and I'll be able to grant that to you. And at the end, we will have some time for Q&A, and I request that you put your questions in the Q&A, not the chat. And that button is also found at the bottom of your screen, slightly to the left of center. And this event is being recorded, and we will share it on our blog and our channels. So as you know, this is the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we are thrilled to have Carrie Thompson present this training today. Carrie is the Executive Director for Silent Rhythms and a 2018 recipient of NEFA's Creative City Grant. She is also the Senior Officer of Communications, Inclusion, and Analytics for the Disability Rights Fund. Carrie is a renowned inclusion expert in how to create inclusive and accessible communications for various sectors, including the arts, healthcare, human rights, nonprofits, and the disability rights movement. She's also a dancer and a dance instructor, having taught more than 5,000 people with disabilities how to dance. NEFA has had the pleasure of getting to know Carrie and her work over several years through a grant to Silent Rhythms and other workshops that she's presented. Carrie, take it away. I'm going to turn off my video now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Anne, for that wonderful introduction. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. And I'm so thrilled to have this opportunity to share with you about how to be inclusive and accessible. As Anne mentioned, this is the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I remember the day that this act was signed 30 years ago. I was too young to understand what it was, but my mother put me in front of the television and she said, "Watch, our lives were about to change." We were just starting to put me into education, and as a deaf-blind person, we weren't sure what did that look like. How could I get the best education possible while also having to be accessible? We didn't have rights just yet, but that day, I remember not what was happening, but I remember watching on the television that there were people using sign language. That was my special language. I've never seen anyone on television before using my special language. That's what I remember about that day. I'm not going to tell you about all the struggles to get an education because I really want to focus more on now, 30 years later. I do want to say that the ADA has been a tremendous achievement for the disability rights movement to help people with disabilities. There's 1 billion people with disabilities around the world. They make up 15% of the world's population. And the United States is actually 20% of the population has a disability because we have more defined definition of what disability is. And also, I wanted to say that a few years later, after the ADA was signed by President George H.W. Bush, I walked across the stage at Louisiana State University to receive my college diploma in front of the commencement speaker, President George H.W. Bush. As I walked across the stage, I mentioned to him, "Thank you." That's all I could say was just, "Thank you." But 30 years later, there is still a struggle for people with disabilities to have access to the basic human rights in education, especially healthcare right now, employment, and the arts. But we're here today really to focus on how we can bring creativity to people with disabilities. So I'm going to ask that Jeffrey go to the next slide, please. Anne already mentioned some of the accessibility notes about having an American Sign Language interpreter. I want to say that there are two different kinds of Zoom meeting. One is a Zoom meeting. In that Zoom meeting, you're able to pin the video of anyone in the meeting and make the video larger. However, this is a Zoom webinar. You, as an attendee, do not have any power to pin or make any of the panelists' videos larger. And as Anne said, if you need to make the interpreter's video larger, so please let us know in the chat, and she will upgrade your status to panelist, and that will enable you to pin the video inside the little panelist room. The closed caption is also something that is a great feature that Zoom offers, where you can, if you click the closed caption icon at the bottom, it has several different options for, one, to turn on the subtitle. Two, if the subtitles are too small for you, they have different settings to make it larger. Whoop. The other thing that Anne just put in the chat, the CART link. CART is short for captioning in real time. The caption for today is being provided by a live human being, not a robot, not an amateur. But in Zoom, you are able to assign anyone as a captioner, and it could be Anne. I could assign Anne as a captioner, and she could type in what people are saying. She wouldn't do a great job at it because she's not a professional, but it's a good option if you have a one-on-one meeting. The other thing that I like to do for accessibility note is a video description. I like to describe what you see in my video for those with visual impairment. So I am a white woman who has long brown hair. I'm wearing headphones with a microphone in front of my face. I'm wearing a red dress. Behind me are 3 pictures of some of my favorite musicals: Wicked, Rent, and The Center, and behind my head is Kinky Boots. So now you know what I look like. I want to go to the next slide so I can tell you more about who am I. Next slide, please. This is another picture of me in another red dress. Red is my favorite color. I think it's very good for stopping traffic when I'm walking around with the white cane. So if you don't see the white cane, you at least see the red dress and go, okay, stop, get out of the way. What's happening in this picture is in front of me is an American Sign Language interpreter. She is signing into my hand what people are saying. Behind me is another interpreter. She's using protactile. She's drawing on my back what is happening around me, what people are doing, what people's facial expressions look like. And I'm going to do a little demonstration right now more about protactile. I don't have a human model with me because clearly I'm supposed to be quarantining and social distancing. So I have this little guy right here. It looks like a husky stuffed dog. And I'm going to demonstrate on this back what protactile is. So I'm going to draw a line straight across the back. That means somebody walked in the room. If I draw a line straight up on the back, it means somebody on the right side has a question. If I do it on the left side, it means somebody on the left side has a question. If I do this motion, bump, 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 tapping on the back like this, it means people are laughing. If I do a circle, it means all people are laughing. If people are smiling, I feel the smile symbol, and all people are smiling. If somebody is on the phone, you'll feel this motion because it's the way they text. So I could always say that somebody on the right side is on their phone, and I go, feel that. And I can always tell them during my lectures, please get off your phone. It's really scary when they hear that, like, but you're blind, how did you know that? I have eyes everywhere. The other thing that I'm going to show you is called a Braille display. A braille display is an electronic keyboard display that has electronic braille. So I do know braille, and here we go. At the bottom are these, right here at the bottom are these different cells that will pop up. So I'll be able to feel braille symbols as people are typing what they're saying, or if I'm reading an email, is connected to a screen reader. Another way for me as a person who is deafblind to connect to what people are doing. Now, I mentioned the Doom subtitles, but sometimes it's too difficult for me to see the Doom subtitles even at the largest setting possible. I also like to use color inversion. And with color inversion, it means that I like to have a dark background with a light color font. And I'm following the caption on the string text line. So I'm showing in my video box the string text line that I'm following with the black background and light color fonts. And so Anne has already mentioned a little bit about my work and that I've done work as an executive director for Silent Rhythm, teaching more than 5,000 people with disabilities. One of the grants that we received from NEFA was for a project called Movements to Move the Marginalized from the Margin. And I've been teaching dance for more than 15 years now to a variety of people with different disability types. But I've always wanted to focus on my own disability type. And I always saw dance as something that was truly a powerful way to connect people with and without disability to come together. A lot of times people without disability don't seem to care about disability issues, or they feel that it's not relevant to them. So the one way that I got people to care about me and about my challenges was to dance with them. And that is how many of the dancers that I've worked with over the years, whether we work together as collaborators or on the dance floor, just dancing, we've gotten to know each other on a personal level. And that has helped them to start thinking about how disability is important in their work. The people that I've danced with over the years include medical doctors, professors, social workers. It's truly amazing how the arts can connect us in a greater sense of community. Now, the pandemic means a new challenge for me, a new challenge for all of us. But the way that I communicate as a deaf-blind person is through touch, touching my back, touching sign language through the hands. And right now, touch is sort of verboten, it's forbidden, it's banned. People can no longer touch each other safely. So the way that I communicate, I can no longer communicate. The way that I've teach people who were deaf-blind how to dance, I can no longer do. I can no longer teach them one-on-one using my hands and having them touch my body. And that means that I've had to think truly about how I can continue to provide access to dance for people with disabilities. I've started a new project that have people with disability being able to take online dance classes using Captions and also using sign language. But for people who are deafblind, online access is something that we so struggle with. And I'm testing something different that is using a contactless, no contact method of providing tactile information without touch. It's a work in progress, and I'm designing a couple of equipment to see how I can provide dance lessons in person to people who are deafblind while maintaining 6 feet. It is definitely interesting, and I've gotten a couple of bruises, but don't worry, I'm going to make sure that the method is perfect before I actually put it to practice. Next slide, please. I want to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. The first couple of things that I want to demonstrate is, one, I want to explain the challenges that people with disabilities face so you can understand what they are. Two, I'm going to teach you about using creative, accessible social media. I will also plan to teach you about how to use accessible virtual meetings for people with disabilities, because these two platforms, social media and virtual meeting, are going to be the method that most of us as artists are going to use to continue to share our art and creativity. I also will remind everyone that if you have questions, to put them in the Q&A or the chat. If that doesn't work, I have a timer set to go off at 10:45, and I'll leave some time for people to ask questions in the Q&A and be happy to address them. In the description of my video background, I mentioned before I talk about that, I also want to say the last point is I'm going to give you some tips on how to make online dance class accessible. And now I want to say that how I describe the video background of the three of my favorite musicals, Wicked, Rent, and Kinky Boots. I was fortunate to have been able to see all these productions in person, either with an ASL interpreter or open caption. I've also seen them all in a movie format and have had the option of having caption for that as well. All of these three musicals relate to me on some level because all three of them have members of society who are viewed as outcasts, who were rejected, face stigma or discrimination. And sometimes the lyrics really speak to me. A lot of times people can assume, how can someone who is deaf or even blind, especially both of them, access music and dance? Now here is a few lyrics from Defying Gravity in Wicked. Here's how the lyric goes. I'm through accepting limit because someone said they're so. Something I cannot change, but till I try, I'll never know. In Rent, one of the most powerful songs is a song where it repeats the same three lines over and over. Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare? That is another thing that really connects to me. I was born deaf and found out when I was 10 years old that I was going blind. So for anyone who has a progressive disability that gets worse over the years, you're always trying to adapt and you're always trying to address new challenges. Every day is a new day, a new challenge. The thing about Kinky Boots that really spoke to me is one, is a person who really loves dancing and as a little boy is trying to learn and just experience the joy of dancing, but the world around him ostracizes him and tells him he cannot do that, he cannot be that, that's not acceptable. But really the bigger message of Kinky Boots is also about how a company that was struggling, a shoe factory, the way they survived during an economic crisis was to serve a population of transgender and drag queen. By serving this population, it ensured their survival. That is something that's not a really big message in Kinky Boots, but it's one that I'm bringing up here because the pandemic means that we are changing the way we do our work. The arts, for many of us, a lot of the dance studios have started to close. Artists are having a hard time continuing to do their work or find a place where they can showcase their work. And that means that they are losing revenues and income. I like to bring up that perhaps one way to help broaden their revenue and outreach is also to serve the population that very few people consider, people with disabilities. Next slide, please. I figured that it'd be good to share a few things about inclusion and understanding some simple concepts of inclusion. It may seem simple to me, but it might be something new to you. What does inclusion mean? Inclusion means creating an environment where all people and ideas are valued. Inclusion in the arts for people with disabilities means that people get to enjoy the theater, museum, and dance as audience members or as artists with disabilities. This means that they are represented on the stage, behind the stage, in the scripts, on the dance floor, off the dance floor, They can be dancers, they can be playwriters, they can be directors, performers, painters, sculptors, or even just behind the scenes as stage crew members. They should have a role at decision-making processes. They should be involved as board members and staff members and advisors to the arts culture sector. There are a lot of surveys that I've seen lately going out related to COVID-19, and many of them do not address disability or even seek people with disabilities' opinion. So that's something that I would like for all of you to consider if you're going to send out a survey. Ask yourself, is this inclusive of people with disabilities? The second concept is about the social model versus the medical model. Social model is the philosophy that disability is not a diagnosis, but rather the result of social, physical, and digital barrier that's caused by society. In short, it's not me, it's you. You remember I said I'm from Louisiana, so there's a little bit of sass in everything I say and do. Now, the medical model is the belief that disability is internal within the person and is caused by their condition. Now, let me explain this concept a little bit more. Perhaps I go into a room where no one knows sign language. My disability has become pronounced in that situation. Now, if I go into a different room where everyone knows sign language, my disability has disappeared. So you see, environment does have an impact on disability. The third concept, inclusion and accessibility, it's important that you understand inclusion and accessibility are not the same thing. Accessibility can be a step towards inclusion, but accessibility does not mean inclusion. For example, once again, I go to a room. I have a sign language interpreter. I've sat down, and on either side of me, on my left and right, the seats are empty. It's a crowded room, but nobody wants to sit next to me. No one wants to talk to me. That is not inclusion. I've gone to tables to sit down at lunchtime with a sign language interpreter and looking forward to networking. People have gotten up from the table to go sit somewhere else. That's not inclusion. The third concept, actually the fourth concept. The fourth concept is intersectionality. A person with a disability can be a woman, a person of color, a Black person, an Indigenous person, a person from the LGBTQI community. For this reason, it is important that minority groups reach out to different other minorities because a person can have many different identities. And a lot of artists with disabilities who are of color or Black are really struggling in this sector. The fifth concept, using the participatory approach. People hear this term and think it is about enabling a specific population to be part of their event, but it is so much more than about being seen. It is truly about making sure that the very population you aim to serve are the ones that are included in the decision-making process. I've received information in the past that my work teaching people with disabilities how to dance had been used for other projects. I was not consulted. And when I learned about the grant project later and how I was expected to be involved, I thought, but I was never consulted. Nobody asked me what my opinion was. And after the fact, I learned this is really not a good project. It's not empowering. It uses very old school medical model languages. Now, the last concept I want to talk about for Inclusion 101 is to make sure that you understand access to the arts and access to information is both a disability right and a human right. The Americans with Disabilities Act does cover arts, and even though it predates the internet, the ADA talked about access to public space. The internet is public space. Next slide, please. And I realize that it might be boring to hear me saying constantly, next slide. So the next time I want the slide change, I'm going to say the new code, which is the dinosaurs are coming. Isn't that creative? Challenges. There are 5 key challenges. Attitudinal. And that's usually the one when people make assumptions about what someone with a disability can or cannot do. Physical. This means that often people face challenges trying to access a public space because of physical barriers, such as the lack of elevator or the lack of public transportation that's accessible, or the lack of a ramp, or the lack of accessible bathroom. The third challenge is communication. And communication means is for people who are deaf or deafblind, hard of hearing, those with visual impairment, intellectual disability, are they able to access your event, whether it's public, online, or physical? Transportation has been another challenge for many people with disabilities. Not everyone has a car, and not every place that by public transportation go to the site of the event where you're going. The last one is not an exhaustive list, but another challenge is financial and poverty. Often that disability means that usually it's 2 ways. Disability can cause poverty, or poverty can cause disability. A lot of people with disabilities do not have access to the arts because they're not able to afford it, or perhaps in the general education curriculum, this was not included for them. So now I want to talk about how can we remove these barriers and how to make social media more accessible. Okay, the dinosaurs are coming. I love that. Hopefully people who join later will understand why I keep saying the dinosaurs are coming. So now we're going to talk about creating an accessible social media. I am seeing the art sector turn into social media to continue to share their creativity. Museums are offering virtual art tours. Some leaders on Broadway are showing their Broadway production on live streaming or showing the previous production. Hamilton just came on Disney Plus, and that had closed caption. We're also seeing that some places are starting to share ASL tour guides, so they're having a virtual tour, but with an American Sign Language user, usually a person who is deaf. And I've reached out to some people that I wanted to take dance classes with, and they're using it through Zoom. And I asked them, can you please put your video recording in YouTube? Because then you're able to auto-generate captions there so that I can watch the class and watch the caption in the same video. We're going to look at the 3 top platforms for social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. One of the key challenges we all face is budgeting. And Anne has mentioned that I have 2 different roles. A silent rhythm, my budget is in the thousands. For the Disability Rights Fund, the budget is in the millions. But both of us have the same challenge. Both organizations have the same challenge of we want to be accessible, and we cannot afford to not be accessible. But now, how can you be accessible if you don't have a lot of funding for it? And one thing that I always try to appeal to grant makers is that you should make sure that everyone that's submitting a grant application, that 5% of their project budget is allocated towards accessibility costs for sign language interpreters, for Braille production, for audio describers. But let me say, why does social media matter? Why should accessible social media matter? For society, for the same reason that social media in general matter to society. It's the way to engage, to connect, to share our thought. It's a vehicle for free speech and to highlight the injustice, to share critical information, and to provide us with entertainment and amusement. Who does not love videos of puppies? Your role You play a role in creating accessible social media. It should not just be part of your job. It should be part of your life. You can post for your work, but you should do the same in your personal life. Don't you count people with disabilities among your friends and family? The dinosaurs are coming. The next slide right here is about writing image description. And on the right side is a picture of me standing with Governor Baker. We are standing in front of the grand staircase at the Massachusetts State House. Governor Baker is wearing a suit and I'm wearing a blue dress with flowers on it. And I'm also holding a white cane in front of me. So now let's talk about image descriptions. And this applies for websites, for social media. Image description, it can be broken down into two different categories. There's alt text and there's description. They have the same purpose of providing visual information for people who are visually impaired, but they use different methods. So now alt text is a descriptive language tool, but only a screen reader can access it. So if you are a website editor and you go to your website and you upload a photo or any kind of image or logo, there are three options usually in the portal. One is for alt text. You add in the alt text describing what's in that image. What you put in the alt text, no one else will be able to see or hear the alt text unless it's a screen reader. The second method is caption, and the caption just means that it's the language that's going to be seen under the picture. Everyone can see that caption. A screen reader does not read the caption. The third item usually is called description. Description means that if you can go much further in depth about what's in the image. Alt text, most screen readers do not read more than 125 characters, and therefore you want to try to limit how much you put in the alt text. Now, description, video description and image description can mean something different in social media. An image description, video description is usually within the post. So you post on Facebook and you say something like, "Hi everyone, welcome to this new webinar." And then underneath the post, I put also in the post, within the post, image description, a picture of Carrie, a woman with long brown hair standing next to Governor Baker. The image description is visible for everyone to see. Not everyone who is blind or low vision uses a screen reader, so you want to try to provide information to them. All of these social media platforms have the ability to add alt text that would only be read by a screen reader. But image description is something that can be read by a screen reader. So if you don't take the extra step to do an alt text in social media, you should always add an image description in your post. On the website, you should always do alt text. So 3 tips for writing a good alt text. Describe the image as specifically as possible. 2, keep it short. Like I said, most screen readers only cap at 125 characters. Sometimes some social media alt text, they cut it off at 100 characters. So try not to do any more than 100 characters. The third tip, don't say image of or picture of. The screen reader already knows this is a picture. Don't waste precious characters. What should you be describing? You should be describing where is the photo being taken. 2, who is in the photo. 3, what are they doing? So again, image description, Carrie, a white woman with long brown hair, wearing a blue dress and holding a white cane, stands next to Governor Baker, a tall man wearing a suit. This is actually 118 characters. It's not necessary to know that my hair is long or that it's brown. You can always take out that part. What's important is to know maybe the color of my skin, the fact that I'm holding a white cane, and who I'm standing next to. The dinosaurs are coming. Now I'm going to talk about social media best practice. These best practices typically work for all social media. When you include a hyperlink, indicate whether it leads to an audio, a picture, or a video, because sometimes a video or audio could lead to something that is not suitable for work. 2, a second tip is to save the hashtags for the end of a post. 3, capitalize the first letter of each word in a hashtag. This is called camel backing. So camel, like the sign of the different hub. So for New England Foundation for the Arts hashtag, the N and you would capitalize N, EW, F capital Foundation. You get the idea. The dinosaurs are coming. And this slide, there's some more suggestions. Tagging. I do recommend tagging because you don't want to waste your precious character limits on who's in the picture. Tagging means that the alt text will automatically read who's tagging. So if you tag people in your photo, the screen reader will read that. So please consider using tagging with the people's permission, of course. Then the other social media best practice is to use image and video description, also to use alt text. And please, please save the emojis until the very end. Emojis do have alt text. And here is an example of a text message that one woman who is blind received. Wishing you a prosperous new year. Excited face with money symbol for eyes and suck out tongue. Excited face with money symbol for eyes and suck out tongue. Excited face with money symbol for eyes and suck out tongue. Excited face with money symbol for eyes and suck out tongue. You guys free tonight? Give me a call. Yeah, really, that was an awful lot of information that was not any information at all. So always save the emojis to the very end. People who are visually impaired, who use screen readers, do use social media and they do use text messages. And we do like emoji. We just like them at the very end. Happy face, happy face. The dinosaurs are coming. Now we'll talk about Twitter accessibility. Twitter accessibility. Twitter has the option to add alt text into your picture. But to do that, you have to go into your settings to turn the feature on. To do that, you go to More, Setting, Accessibility, and then you turn on, you click a check mark by Compose Image Description. The dinosaurs are coming. So now here's a screenshot of after I've uploaded a photo to Twitter, and there's an option at the bottom that says description. So I can now type in the description. You remember, you have to make sure that the feature is enabled beforehand. The description that I'm typing here is not viewable to the public. Only a screen reader can read this. And remember, try to keep it at about 100 characters. The next slide, please. So now I'm going to tell you about adding human-generated alt text to Facebook and Instagram. Unlike Twitter, Facebook and Instagram have auto-generated alt text. Unlike Twitter, you do not have to enable alt text in settings. Now, I don't like alt text, auto-generated alt text. Why? Because this is just looking for an object in the picture. So the picture of me with Governor Baker would be woman, man, steps. That's the auto-generated alt text. No, I'm not sharing this picture because I want you to know that a woman and a man and steps are in the picture. I'm trying to brag that I'm standing next to Governor Baker. So I can go in and add alt text to Facebook and Instagram. To do this, you go and upload the photo. So this is a screenshot of me uploading a photo to Facebook. And then if I hover over the photo that I just uploaded in the post, you can see the little pencil on the side. And then for Instagram and LinkedIn, doing the same thing. You upload the photo and you post, but instead of at the bottom right, it's at the top right. Next slide, please. So after you click the pencil, it'll go to this screen here that shows you how to add alt text. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about accessible virtual meetings. In fact, I think I'm going to run through quickly because I now see a time check is 10:45. And what I want to talk about briefly for accessible virtual meeting are the platforms that you can use. Next slide, please. This is a list of several different platforms that you can use. There are many, but I mention these specifically because they also include auto-generated caption. Auto-generated alt text is not very good. Auto-generated caption are not that bad, actually. So on this list, we have Skype, which does include for the video call an option to add alt text. Auto-generated caption, pardon me. Facebook, you can upload your photos. You can upload your video to Facebook and add caption. YouTube, you can add caption. Google Meet, as long as one person has a G Suite account, you can have a meeting with auto-generated caption. Microsoft Teams, the same thing, and Zoom. Next slide, please. This is a flow chart that I did so that people who are using Zoom understand how captions work. So with Zoom webinar, you can live stream to Facebook and YouTube. And yes, they will show the caption during the live event. Later, after your event is over, Facebook no longer shows the caption. But you can go back to the Facebook Live recording and edit caption. If you have an SRT file, you can upload it to that Facebook video. You can also go to any of your old Facebook videos and add caption, or you can enable the auto-generated caption, and you can also edit the auto-generated caption. That's usually what I ask a lot of people who are uploading their video to try to turn on the auto-generated caption. It doesn't cost a thing. Next slide, please. So here I'm just telling you a few things for Facebook is that if you are live streaming directly from Facebook, you do not have the option to turn on the auto-generated caption during your live stream. I know, but after your live event, you can go back and add the caption. You can add caption to the recording, upload your own document or type it. In Facebook Live, you can also work with a third-party captioner such as AI Media or 3Play Media. The dinosaurs are coming. YouTube, unlike Facebook, when you do a live event in YouTube, you can enable auto-generated captions. That's awesome. And just like Facebook, you can upload captions, you can edit captions, you have a lot of options. The other thing I want to say with Facebook and YouTube, there is not an option to add audio description for your video. So it would be really good to describe what's happening in your video. Next slide, please. Okay. So now I want to talk quickly about having an accessible online dance class. Okay. So this is a logo from the Dance ASL Project that I've been doing for Silent Rhythms, where I'm now providing dance teachers with an opportunity to teach a 30-minute dance class. I wanted to support the dance community who've lost their income by providing them with a small stipend. At the same time, it was an incentive for those dance teachers to learn how to be accessible and inclusive. Next slide, please. So in this video is the live streaming version of a dance class. And this has on the left side a sign language interpreter who is wearing black t-shirt, and she has a gray curtain behind her. On the right side is the dance teacher who is wearing all black, and he has a solid background. So the first couple of things to do to make an accessible online dance class is one, you should always be wearing solid colored clothing. The clothes should contrast with your skin color. When you're teaching a dance class, your wall should also be completely blank. It's a blank canvas for your body. You want to do a test. The test should test your limitation in the video to how far you can go off screen and on screen, up and above. Sometimes it helps if you take paint tape and put it on the floor when you've decided where your perimeter is before you go off the camera. And I always tell people to do a test. It is so important to do a test for anything, for your online meeting, for your online classes. And this is my little jingle that's inspired by Beauty and the Beast, Be Our Guest. I call it Do a Test. I'm not a singer, so I'm going to apologize for singing to you right now. And this is how it goes for Do a Test. Do a test, do a test, put your service to the test. Try the gray button. It's important. Don't believe me? Ask the technician. Good heaven, is that a spot? Clean it up. We want the donor to be impressed. Cause by cause, one by one. Okay, thank you. Okay, more tips for an accessible dance class. Explain first and then demonstrate. So it's difficult if you are demonstrating the dance and speaking at the same time. The person who is looking at the sign language interpreter is like trying to look back and forth and can't watch both of them at the same time. So it's very helpful to do one thing at a time. This screenshot doesn't show the caption, but the live streaming did have caption, and you can do this through Zoom, but I like using StreamYard because I have more control over how I can make videos. I can add and change videos, make it smaller, larger, and give a lot more options than you can with Zoom. Well, share terms ahead of time. So in dancing, there are a lot of terms that maybe not many people are familiar with ahead of time. Susie Q, grapevine, and then set the right background. That's the other tip, which I already mentioned, that you want to have solid clothes and you want to have solid background for your wall. You don't want to have black clothes with a black wall because then you just bleed out too much. So now the last slide, the dinosaur is finally coming. Oh, I put my tips here, pardon me. So here are the tips. One more, once again, the dinosaurs are coming. Okay, so now I want to give you a call to action to be change makers. I would like for grant makers to be accessible and thinking about, is their website and your grant application accessible? Make sure that your grant application really asks, how will you include people with disabilities in this project? A lot of times there's usually a statement that people have to check that they promise not to exclude people with disabilities, but that's not the same as saying including people with disabilities. The other thing I want is for others, always consider people with disabilities as being in your audience. It's a sad fact that the pandemic may mean that the number of disabilities will go up. Disability is the one minority that can be joined at any time in your life by anyone, regardless of age, race, or gender. For teachers, always consider an inclusive space for people with disabilities. And for everyone, understand you all play a role in being inclusive in your creativity. I truly believe that the art is something that can help us to practice mental and physical well-being as we go through the COVID-19 crisis. Long after we get past the pandemic, I hope that a lot of the creativity strategies we try to use online will be continued in the future. The last slide. One more slide, thank you here. Questions is now I'm going to give you a chance to ask your question. And I want to say that my email is Carrie@silentrhythmsboston.org. And also, I really skipped through a lot of different information. I want to bring up that I've done a couple of Inclusion 101 webinars. And if you visit silentrhythms.org/inclusion101, you can find more information about specifically on inclusive and social media and robot captions and captions. Another on why it's important to include people with disabilities in the arts. Another is on how to provide accessible communication for people who are deafblind. So there's so much more that I was not able to cover today that you can find in some of my previous webinars. And now I'm going to turn it back to Anne.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I know that that's a lot of information, and to all of our attendees, please know that we will post the video probably next week. So you'll have a chance to review some of the tips and links and ideas that Carrie shared. Carrie, there are just a few questions that I'll share with you. One of them is, if you know if Vimeo offers free auto captioning.
Oh, so I did forget to mention Vimeo. Vimeo is another option that does offer caption, but usually you have to pay for that access. So I believe Vimeo is $80 per year, which isn't really that bad.
Thank you. I had no idea. Another question came in wondering, and perhaps this is something we can follow up with, if you have any other online resources to make social media and virtual spaces accessible.
Yeah, so if you go to silentrhythm.org/inclusion101, there is a link for the different webinars, but I also include a lot of links to blogs that I've taught. Some of the blogs include, one is on Inclusion 101 for a guide for the well, meaning the well-doing and the well-clueless. Another is inclusive distancing. So that is the blog that I wrote a few months ago about the pandemic and talking about right now when we're social distancing, how we can do so inclusively. So there's another place. I will continue to keep adding this information to this page. I just started it yesterday because I realized that people were going to ask me more about other webinars. So give me a little bit of time to keep updating and make that page look good.
Another question is, could you share the Silent Rhythms website where we can find more information again?
Yes, is it on the?
It's on the
No, it's
page,
not.
and I'll type it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
I hope I didn't mistype. Let's see. Let's see, 2 more questions if we have a moment. One is, can you refer us to an online resource that can help us assess how accessible our website is? And ideally, if it's an automated tool.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Daisy, DAISY, is an organization that works on trying to provide accessible and inclusive websites. You can also look up W3ICT, which will have more information about the website content accessibility guideline, which is also short, is also by the acronym WCAG. You can also ask me about accessible websites because I'm also the website editor for both Disability Rights Fund, Disability Rights Advocacy Fund, and Silent Rhythm.
One last question. For professional live closed captioning, can you recommend some organizations or businesses that offer this service for Zoom events for hire?
Yeah. Well, one of the good things about being deaf is that over the years, I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with a number of captioners, and I continue to work with the same ones over and over. But there are companies that do provide caption. There's 3Play Media. There's also AI media, artificial intelligence media, then if you're in Massachusetts, you can reach out to the Massachusetts Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing through the interpreter referral program, and you can request a professional captioner through that. If you are not based in Massachusetts, you can also look if your state has a commission for the deaf and hard of hearing. There's typically a commission for most of the 50 states in the United States.
Excellent. I don't see any other questions. Let me just double check. Sorry, there is a late breaking question. Are there resources for creating accessible spaces for visual arts?
For visual arts, not that I'm aware of, but I think one of the good ways to educate yourself on creating accessible visual art is just to make sure that whether you are being descriptive or, you should always be descriptive in person, virtually. Consider also that not many videos can be accessible for people who are visually impaired. Sometimes it's helpful to add video description in the comments. So if you have YouTube and you have the comment enabled, to put in a description in the comments. And I wanted to say that there's also a late breaking news that just happened yesterday, that YouTube announced that they're no longer going to offer community captioning. That was supposed to be a tool that anybody uploading their the video, could be open to the community to type in the caption for you, but it was being misused and a lot of people were spamming and putting inappropriate language there. So YouTube took down that. I'll have to think more carefully about other tools. Open Door Arts is one organization that I know that's trying to work to provide access to visual arts for after-school programs. I'll keep thinking about that and I'll get to Anne if I have more resources that I can think of.
That's great. And this has come up a couple times in chat and in Q&A. We will send out the recording. Once it's all set, we have to include the SRT file to the recording. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time. And thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing your expertise and your advocacy and your lovely energy. If anyone has any last words, I'll just wish everyone a safe and relaxing weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.